Adam Meyer of Mill City Lutherie, and in this video we're going to do a restoration or partial restoration of this 1965 Gibson Country Western. This was brought in recently inherited. It is the owner's, it belonged to his grandfather and has been handed down, and it had received pretty much no maintenance since it was bought new. So we're going to go through it and get it back in plain condition. We're not going to be doing finish touch-up and stuff because we have wear marks in the top that can't be hidden. They're there. I can put finish over them and it's still going to look real ugly. I'm just going to do the things that gets this playing really well. So it's time to restore Grandpa's guitar. So probably the best thing about this job right now is that it appears as though the guitar does not need a neck reset. You can see that we've got pretty normal action, and it's an adjustable bridge, and it is definitely not all the way at the bottom. So we will not be needing to pull this neck off, which is pretty big relief. Original bridge, we'll be getting some new bridge pins. Showing this up close because we've got some cracks going between the string holes there. So when we get this bridge taken off, I'll be gluing that back together. Piece of wood like this you really don't want to have to replace. If this was a newer instrument and you know if that was a more severe crack, it would be nice just to replace the bridge. But you can also see the striping in this bridge. It's a really unique piece of wood. Considering that it's original, I really do not want to get rid of this. If you look into the mirror there, I'm shining the flashlight into it. That's the bridge plate. There's bolts going through it for the adjustable bridge, or the adjustable saddle. There are chips out of the wood where the strings have kind of ground away. So that bridge plate has been weakened over time. I'll be putting a new piece of wood in there to help keep this guitar playing well. Now regarding the bridge plate inside the guitar, that is a support piece just like the braces that go across the top. So I've got a scrap body here, and I've cut the back off so I can show you an example. We've got all these braces that help keep the top flat, but also where the strings come through. This is the bridge plate. It's an extra piece of flat wood glued directly underneath where the bridge is. This helps support the bridge and the top against the pull of the strings. Over time, the strings can break away chips between the string holes, or just simply the wood isn't strong enough to hold up to the pull of the strings over time. So you end up having to pull this piece of wood out. What I'll do is I'll take one of my heating mats and I'll hold it against this piece of wood. That will heat up the glue, and then I can take this tool and I'll reach my hand inside and I will work it along the edge to pry that piece of wood out of the guitar. So this is my setup for removing the bridge plate. I just have these heating blankets and a module to control the temperature. I've used this in a bunch of my other videos. I have this claw tool to pull on the edge of the bridge plate, and this block to help stabilize the top. I'm just showing you this now because there's not really going to be much to watch. I'm just going to skip past this. I'm going to be putting my hand all the way inside here and holding the heating blanket against the bridge plate inside. You can see my finger there through the hole. And that will heat up the glue holding that, and I just have to pry it loose. I'll get it out. Going to be wetting the surface to try and create a little steam to help help the glue come loose a little bit. This should be hide glued in here. It's old enough that pretty sure that's what it is. It's brown looking, but always make sure to cover the label and everything. So okay, we've got the plate out successfully. It was very just very minor splinters left on that. Came out pretty cleanly. It's not this is a pretty good removal. As you can see, that it buckled quite a bit from the heat getting it out. It's just something that happens. Now I'm going to end up replacing it with another piece of maple. I usually cut out my own bridge plates. This is still a little bit thick, but I'll just trace this out, and I'll be going with basically the same size as this. If this guitar had a really severe belly, I would then put a padded board across the top and help kind of train it to be a little bit flatter before trying to clamp things together. This one, it had some, but getting that bridge plate out of there, this really settled down. So I think it was primarily the bridge plate had kind of buckled over time, and that's what was creating that little bit of belly in here. Without it, everything's looking real good, so we don't really need to worry about that, and we'll just get a better bridge plate in. Like I was saying, I make my own every now and then. If we've got a guitar that's kind of a problem, I might make the bridge plate a little bit thicker, or I might make it a little bit larger, where I can fit it in between the braces. But with this one, I'm just going to go with the same size, because it appears as though the bridge plate was more the issue than the top, the spruce of the top getting stretched out. So kind of a good sign. Here's the new bridge plate and the old. Got them pretty close to the same size. Added maybe like 1/8 of an inch, a little bit more this way. It's feeling it probably not even a 32nd of an inch thicker. So just a little bit something, a little more oomph to it to help it, help keep this top leveled out for many more years. Okay, there are times when I'm replacing something like a bridge plate or a brace inside an old guitar and the wood is aged, but as you can see, this bridge plate, it's actually pretty clean. It's pretty close to the same color as this brand new maple one, so I'm going to be skipping that step. Otherwise, I'd mix up some potassium permanganate. It oxidizes wood, helps it make it look like it's old, but it'd be way too easy to make this too dark, and then it'll stand out like, okay, that's obviously fake. So this, it looks pretty good. Once you get it in there, nobody's going to be able to tell. Here's the new bridge plate and the old. Got them pretty close to the same size. Added maybe like 1/8 of an inch, a little bit more this way. It's feeling it probably not even a 32nd of an inch thicker. So just a little bit something, a little more oomph to it to help it, help keep this top leveled out for many more years. Just made cut out a piece of maple. I marked it so I can put glue on it and place it inside and know that I have it in place. So it's not, I have it glued here. It's not doing anything like that or sliding around. Now I'll just use regular woodworker's glue because Gibson was not using hide glue in this guitar anymore. I sometimes forget when they stopped doing that, but 60s they were using wood glue. And I'll just clamp it, put some cork on the top here, put a board on top. There will be a caul inside to help clamp this together, and I'll try and get as many clamps in as I can to help just get it nice and even and get this a nice strong fit here. Okay, there are times when I'm replacing something like a bridge plate or a brace inside an old guitar and the wood is aged, but as you can see, this bridge plate, it's actually pretty clean. It's pretty close to the same color as this brand new maple one, so I'm going to be skipping that step. Otherwise, I'd mix up some potassium permanganate. It oxidizes the wood, helps it make it look like it's old, but it'd be way too easy to make this too dark, and then it'll stand out like, okay, that's obviously fake. So this, it looks pretty good. Once you get it in there, nobody's going to be able to tell. Got this all prepped. We're ready to get things glued back together. I've cleaned up the bottom of the bridge. Now we need to get the adjustment pieces put back in for the saddle. Obviously that has to be done before we glue the bridge on. So I've used an awl to mark a center point, pretty good where that would be. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to then follow it up. That's going to be an undersized hole. Then I'm just going to nudge it open with my reamer a little bit. That way if I'm off one way or the other, I can kind of work it to be centered up with the bridge, because it's don't want to be off with this, otherwise the posts and everything, it's just not going to fit together. So I'll be able to kind of just nudge things one way or the other so that this all goes right together. I'll also be drilling the 2 holes for the bridge screws. I don't know if these have a specific name or not. Those will also help center everything, get this back in place where it needs to be. Use a little block inside to help keep the wood from splitting once I get through. We've got it pretty close to center, so this shouldn't be a big deal at all. Reamed out the top of the hole enough where I can tell that I'm really close to center. So that's going to fit a regular drill bit now. There we go. And we got it. Alright, same thing on the base side. Reamed out the top of the hole enough where I can tell that I'm really close to center. So that's going to fit a regular drill bit now. There we go. And we got it. Okay, so we've got the insert and it's going to fit in just fine right there. So what I'm going to do is Gibson used a nut and a lock washer to hold these in place. I'm going to add a flat washer between the bridge plate and the lock washer. Just give a little more resistance so that the teeth of the washer don't dig into the wood, and the expansion and contraction of the wood ends up coming loose. This will be a little more resistant to coming loose. So we'll just put this all together. It'll be finger tight for now, and I'm going to try fitting everything back onto the top. Alright, I have the inserts all bolted in, and I added the adjustment post and saddle. Now let's see what we have for a fit. Make sure we're all lined up here. That slides right over, and I can check my outline here and the holes. Everything lines up just right. So I'll be pulling the saddle and the post back out. The inserts stay in the guitar, but first I'll drill for these the two screws to go through the bridge, and those will be glued in at the same time that I glue the bridge on. Or, well, they don't have to be. I'll probably still do that. I think you usually skip it, but yeah, this is looking like a really good fit. So next step is getting this glued all back together. Not sure if you can see or not, but I scored the bottom of this really well. Crisscross pattern. Well, not really a pattern, just creating more surface area for the glue to bite into this. I also did some acetone on this because this is rosewood, which is an oily wood. You want to make sure you have as clean of a gluing surface as possible, both sides. Make sure to clean any debris, glue, residue, anything off the top. I placed the adjustment height screws up through those bushings to make sure that glue does not fill these holes. I will be clamping this together, taking it apart, and making sure that I have not built up any glue inside here. Otherwise, our saddle is not going to fit down in there if we've got ridges of glue inside. I'll be putting the two bolts through to help locate everything, but it will be the same thing. Once the glue starts to tack, I'm going to take everything apart again, and I'm going to then pull those out because I don't want glue building up on the threads. Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to get a nut on the inside. You might think, well, why not just glue it all together and clamp it together? The wood can shrink over time, and if I've bolted it together and there's glue on the bolt and the nut, but then it's just stuck, and if the wood shrinks, it could rattle around. So there's a deliberate reason why I'm kind of back and forth, put it together, take it apart, put it back together. So there's a method to it, just got to kind of follow through. These, frankly, they're a little bit of a pain in the ass, but it's the original bridge. Got to follow through, make sure that we keep things as original as possible. Now that I have this clamped, I want to clean up around my lines here where the tape is to make sure that everything is where it should be, that I'm in alignment, that I don't have gaps, that the bridge isn't actually clamped onto the tape. We are looking really good. So once we get this cleaned up a little bit, I will then follow through, clamp down the sides of this, then let it set for maybe 5 minutes or so. I'll pull this all back off and then double check to make sure that I don't have glue seeping into anywhere I need to, and also to pull out the bridge bolts. A little bit of squeeze out there, so I got to make sure I get that cleaned up. That's what I was talking about. Alright, time to put the bridge bolts back in. We got the screw that fits through, but on the inside, if you can see this here, I'm going to add a little lock washer. It has the little teeth on the inside, or you can get the type that is a split washer. That helps keep these from coming loose. Oftentimes have somebody call up and their guitar's got a rattle, find out that the nut inside has come loose on these bolts. So the little lock washer helps keep tension on the thread so it doesn't come loose. So try and hold all three together, and then feel for the bolt inside. There we go. And got to reach the nut somehow. There we go. Before I get started on leveling this fingerboard, well, I'm not going to do a full leveling, just kind of clean up the fret slots. Older instruments with the inlays, especially these plastic ones, just make sure that we don't have any corners lifting up. And this one actually looks pretty good. I don't see anything. If there was, then I would bleed a little super glue along the edge and then just lightly clean it up. But all of these are in good shape. We do have a little bit of gap along some of them, but nothing's come loose. establish what radius this is. Looks like it's closest to a 12, which is pretty common for Gibsons, unless because of age or somebody working on it, but it's a pretty good 12-inch. So I've gone ahead and cut a piece of fret wire for each fret slot, and what I need to do now is trim back the tang, because this will not fit between the binding. The slots do not come all the way out the side of the fingerboard. So I have this special nipper here. Cut off a little bit of either side. Just check for the 9th fret, and you just trim it back until it fits between the binding. The tang doesn't trim off perfectly clean, so now I have to sand the bottom side of the bead. That's before cleaning it, and that is after. This will now rest on the binding and leave a clean edge. Before using my fretting clamp for the fingerboard tongue, I'll just double stick a block of wood inside. You can cut something out to fit around this brace, but this particular brace is way back behind the fret, so I'll be able to just stick this in and just use the clamp normally. So the idea is you don't have anything supporting the tongue here when you're putting in the fret. You don't want to pound it in. There are other tools. There's a thing called a fret buck. It's this big metal contraption placed on here. I've used those before. They wiggle their way loose. I just don't like them. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put just a little bit of glue down in there, get the fret in place. Then I'm going to use a clamp to press it down and hold it in place. Got these all seated nicely. Follow up and bleed just to make sure I'll bleed a little bit of thin super glue along either edge before moving down the rest of the neck. Okay, so we're on to the main part of the neck now. I'm going to be supporting the neck with my neck rest here and just using my dead blow hammer to pound them in. I do have a vice grip type of clamp to glue in, but these are going in real nice. They're sitting nice and flush to the bottom without any extra effort. So, you know, it's kind of a hassle to use that thing. I save that for when I need to actually glue the frets in and hold them in place, because the guitar's been refretted several times, but that's not the case here. So just gonna take a prepared fret and run it through the fret bender, but I'll still add just a tiny bit extra curve at the end to get this to rest on the binding a little bit, but you can't do too much. If you do too much, then when you press the fret down in, it's going to press down too much on the plastic and you can end up cracking and breaking out the binding. So it's just a slight touch. If you can maybe see that, just a tiny bit. And fret slot's been cleaned out. Just run a little bit of glue through the middle. Then it's just put it in place. Feel for where it wants to grab. Make sure that you're in between the binding. pins. Time to do the fret dress. Now, I'm doing this without the neck jig. It's not, I find with acoustics it's typically not necessary unless something is questionable about the truss rod, or when it was strung up before, there's just something about it that was out of whack. This is all working out really well. So from nut to the body joint, just got to get everything straight. It's cylindrical, so it's straight lines all the way across, just like the side of a cylinder. There will be fall off from here up, so it's like a straight edge. Use your straight edge here, but then once you get to here, it'll tip down. That's pretty normal. So here we go. Let's get started. When dressing frets, it's not only a matter of making sure that you are level like this, you also need to make sure that your radius is consistent. Gibsons usually are 12-inch radius. I find with older guitars in particular, the wood has, if somebody hasn't deliberately altered it, over time the wood has rounded a little bit. This guitar in particular is actually more of a 10-inch radius, so I'm also making sure that I have a consistent 10-inch radius on the frets. So on these really old guitars, when I replace the nut, I like to use actually a bleached bone nut. And then I take some aged clear lacquer and I'll brush it on. It actually looks better if you're a little bit sloppy. It's out of one of these lacquer pens. You can also just, a little harder to control with this. You get the idea. Do this around all the edges. Try and keep it out of the slots. But I need to touch up the slotting on this nut a little bit once I get everything finalized with the setup anyways. Bleached bone nut with finish touch-up. That's how it turns out. Looks really good. Blends in with everything. Look at it next to those inlays that are quite aged. This fits right in. Looks a lot better than one of the natural unbleached bone nuts. You know, I'd use that on something that was a newer instrument, but on something like this turns out looking so much better. And we've got a couple little dings on the back of the neck here the customer would also like touched up, so I'm just going to drop in a little bit of cherry red. I'll get this filled in with the red, and then it won't be flush to the top. After this I'll be adding some clear coat because it wasn't cherry all the way through the finish, just down by the wood. There's another spot down here closer to the nut, so I'll just dot this in a little bit. Instead of taking this to a buffing wheel, because this has been played on since the 60s, this finish is going to be pretty thin. I'm just going to use a little liquid car polish and just rub by hand, and it'll match the existing finish much better. I'm not trying to make this look like it's fresh out of the Gibson factory. I just want to ease what the customer feels here, get rid of the dings.
Yeah, that's awesome. Sounds great.
And there you have it. We're all done. New bridge plate, bridge reglue, full refret and nut. It's ready to go. This is in great shape, plain condition. You know, there's some wear. It's, you know, from the 60s. Probably the best news about this is how it does not need a neck reset. We still have plenty of adjustment on the saddle. Getting that bridge plate in here, flattening the top out a little bit, you know, it's not literally a flat top, but keeps the angle down, and, you know, as you can see, this saddle, we've got plenty of room to go down yet. So there's plenty of life left in this guitar. So it's time to get it back to the customer. And if you have any questions about this or any other repairs in my library, you can leave a comment in the comment section or contact me directly. My information is in the About section of my channel, and we'll see you next time. Jump, jump. Good girl. Come on. Jump, jump. Good girl. One more. Come on, jump, jump.